Hello everyone, welcome to today's session where we're going to look at the essay In Praise of Ignorance by Hilary Belloc. Before we begin the textual analysis, let's have a quick look on the biographical information of the essayist Hilary Belloc. Hilary Belloc was the son of a French father and an English mother who was born in 1870 at Saint Cloud, France, but raised in England, studying at the best private schools. He went to Balliol College, Oxford University, where he became president of the Oxford's Union, which was the debating society, university's debating society. His corpus includes verses, fiction, essays, history, biography, and huge number of letters. He was also the editor of the political weekly Eyewitness, and he is also known as the Big Four of Edwardian letters, along with G.K. Chesterton, George Bernard Shaw, and H.G. Wells. And if we talk about the style of Belloc, then his prose style is free from journalistic peculiarities. While reading his works, a reader can easily mark his intellectual maturity, accomplished, his well assimilated, we can say, there is a well assimilated scholarship in his writings, and of course his love of life. And his major works include Cautionary Tales for Children, which is a poetry collection, and his collection of essays titled On Nothing, On Anything, On Something. So let's begin the essay now. I am reading it. Erasmus wrote in praise of folly. I, coming exactly 400 years after, would like to write in praise of ignorance. So, starting with a delightful and a novel manner, here Belloc is mentioning or introducing his praise of ignorance by stating that 400 years ago there was Erasmus who wrote in praise of folly or foolishness. Erasmus was one of the greatest Renaissance humanists and theologians, and he was a Dutch who visited England many times. So, it was Erasmus who wrote a book on folly or in praise of folly, which was titled Moria Encomium. So here Belloc is saying that 400 years ago Erasmus wrote in praise of folly, and now I would like to, or he's expressing his desire that I would like to write in praise of ignorance. I would like to write a little book about it, just as he did about folly. But I am most unjustly handicapped. So while expressing his desire to write in praise of ignorance, he is saying that yes, he wants to uh, frame his essay or frame his little book on the model of Erasmus, Moria Encomium, but he feels himself or he finds himself unfairly disabled, unjustly handicapped. Now he is expressing his inhibition in writing or in this proposed venture of writing a little book on the or in the praise of ignorance. So in the next lines he is giving the reasons that why does he feel unjustly handicapped or unfairly disabled. In the first place, I can't write what I like because we are not free. As the man of the Renaissance were free, the first reason he is giving for his doubts and uncertainties is that unlike Renaissance man, the man of Renaissance who were free, because Renaissance was the great revival of art and literature in the 14th century, and unlike those men or those people like Erasmus, he is not as free in his expression as they were. And the second doubt he has in beginning or in initiating this venture or in writing a good book or dealing with the subject justly or with justice, the second reason he is giving for his fear is that in the second place I haven't the talent. And in the second reason, he is very humbly admitting the he's admitting that he finds himself not able enough, that he has not skill or talent enough talent to deal with such a gigantic or such a good subject like ignorance, in praise of ignorance. Still, I can at any rate write a little article in praise of ignorance, and so help me God, I will. But still, he is now, though he finds himself untalented, and there are certain prohibitions, or we can say uh, obstacles in writing freely about the topic like ignorance, but still he is determined enough that at any rate he will write at least a little article in praise of ignorance. And he is in this last statement, he is also seeking the assistance of God in performing this task, or in fulfilling his desire of writing in the praise of ignorance, and doing justice with such a topic. The next paragraph: remark the scope and amplitude of the affair. Let any man, at first this line actually, what he wants to do here, or he is drawing our attention towards the scope and magnitude, towards the magnitude and the extent of this topic, the amplitude and the scope this topic, this praise of ignorance holds. He is saying that, remark that he is hinting towards the uh, extent, or the magnitude, or what this topic holds in itself. So he is proceeding with this indication: let any man, however learned he may think himself, however varied his acquaintance with man, muck, money, and the printed world, set down a list of subjects on which he could competently deal. So now here he is, in order to substantiate his point, that how big, how amplified, or how uh, momentous, or we can say big, this task of dealing with the praise of ignorance is, that so in order to substantiate that how ignorance is important, and how ignorance, what role ignorance plays in our part, or all over in the praise of ignorance, and in order to glorify ignorance, he is challenging the readers, or he is exhorting the readers to do one task, that they should find a man, or let me know any man, or find a man who finds himself learned enough, or who finds himself that he knows much, he knows very much about the things, he has good knowledge about the variety of things, he has he is acquainted with man, muck, money, and the printed word. Then say to him, what to say this learned man, what task he is expected to do, that he should make a list of subjects on which he could skillfully deal with, that he is very skillful and he is very good in that. Then let him compare it with the vast, the oceanic prospect of the things of which he knows nothing, and then let him make one more list, which would be obviously again. So he has already given these adjectives to those, that list about which the man knows nothing, that would be surely vast, oceanic, that would be, the list will go long, about which he knows nothing. So let him compare that, say to him that make two lists, one list about which he knows competently or skillfully, and the second list about which he knows nothing, and then say to him that compare it, compare both the lists. Then obviously that the list about which he knows nothing, the list about his unawareness, about his ignorance, about which, the things about which he is ignorant, will be surely vast and oceanic. Nor let any man be humbled by this comparison. Now here with this line, Balak seems to give an alert that compare both the list. By comparing, man will, or everybody will, who feels that he knows good enough, will come to know, or will discover that there are so many things are in the world about which he knows nothing, after this comparison between these two lists of ignorance and knowledge, he will come to know that yes, there are so many things about which he knows nothing. Nor let any man be humbled by this comparison, but don't let this comparison ashamed you. Don't feel guilty or ashamed of this comparison or of discovering that you still don't know many things. And one more aspect of this line we can infer here is that after comparing or after discovering, or when there is a revelation to us that we are still ignorant about so many things, it makes us feel humble. And this humbleness or this realization, what it does, it makes us after this realization, we begin to gain more and more knowledge. So this awareness is good for us. So nor let any man be humble. No, don't feel ashamed or guilty by this comparison. It is a great thing to possess a true knowledge of one's own ignorance. This knowledge of ignorance, this awareness of ignorance. So here Valak is pointing out that knowledge of things is good, but we must be conscious of our ignorance about so many things in this world, and what this awareness or this knowledge of ignorance will do. It will be the first step towards learning. It is a great thing to possess a true knowledge of one's own ignorance, for in a sense you must have knowledge even to know the names of things which you do not know. So here he is saying that you must have knowledge even to know true knowledge of one's own ignorance. It is good. It is a step towards learning. And then now he is giving so many terms about which most of us don't know, and what is the purpose of giving these many things or these many jargons? We say these things jargons because we don't know about them, and there are still so many things about which we don't know. And these are the terms like, for instance, by Peirce, metabolism and eutychianism, isostatics and the greater lymphatics by Peirce in terms of rhyming. So we can also sense here the gentle humor and the natural and the novel and delightful style of Valak. So in Peirce he is giving us these terms: metabolism and eutychianism, isostatics and the greater lymphatics, chronology and entomology, to say nothing of apology in the sense of arguments in defense of religious doctrine. Now here this word apology is in the context of apologetics. It is not apology which usually we display. It is not that apology. Actually this is related to apologetics, which is a religious we can say religious discipline. And this religious discipline, what we do with this apologetics, this religious discipline is we do that this religious discipline is a term for defending religious doctrines through a systematic discourse and argumentation. So this is apologetics. And so this is apology, and we don't know about these terms well, because apology we may confuse it, but it is actually apologetics. For apology to a policeman is every man's affair. This is not that affair. This apology is not related to that affair which we face on daily basis with policemen. You may take a list of countries. Now again he is challenging our knowledge, the knowledge of readers, by giving one more example that okay, you may take a list of countries of which you know the name and the shape on the map, but of themselves nothing at all. Of towns, of persons, very great persons whose names are familiar to you, but beyond the name, nothing. So here in a very clear way he has proved it that yes, we know dozens of countries' name and their shape on map, but we know very little about their people and their history. So this is our ignorance, and we must acknowledge it, and this acknowledgement of ignorance will be the first step towards knowledge. So ignorance, acquaintance with ignorance is not a bad thing. It is a good thing, and we should not feel ashamed or guilty for it. To go back to theologies, Examine yourself on genealogy. Now, here, one by one, he is giving arguments in praise of ignorance, that how portion of ignorance will be always greater or higher than portion of knowledge. To if we go back to theologies, or if we want to discuss about theologies, or we can say about, if we want to study about God or religion in general, then at first we should test ourselves on genealogy. Genealogy is a record of descent line or lineage of any person. It is related to history of any person. So if we see the genealogy, if we test ourselves on genealogy, what were the then now he is giving us a series of questions related to very popular and famous historical facts, but we will be surprised to know that we don't know the details about them. How? The first question is, what were the maiden names of Charlemagne's four great grandmothers? Now, here Charlemagne is the king of Franks, who is also known as Charles First or Charles the Great, who he was a great conqueror. And what were the maiden names? Maiden names are the original last name of married women. So, what were the maiden names of Charlemagne's four great grandmothers? We don't know about it. And the second question to challenge our knowledge is, who is the rightful king of England at the present moment, if the supposed but doubtful will of Henry VIII still have force of law? Now, this is a quite popular episode in terms of history, but we are ignorant about it. And here in this bracket, he is indicating towards this the significance of ignorance, that after listening this question, we seem to feel that we know about it, because we know about this, that doubtful will of Henry VIII. We have heard about about this case related to rightful king of England, but then to this and ignorance intrude means this uninvited ignorance, or we don't give permission, but ignorance intrudes in us because we remain unanswered. And the third is, what were the claims of the Spanish Infanta to that same throne of England at the end of the 16th century? Now, where Spanish Infanta is Isabella, the daughter of Spanish King Philip II, who claimed the throne of England for himself or his daughter. Now, this episode is very famous episode in the history of England, which is related to the conflict between Spanish Armada and British Navy during the reign of Elizabeth I. But we find ourselves speechless, or we don't have any answer related to this famous episode. So this is our ignorance, and this enlightenment of our ignorance will lead us towards the path of learning. And who was the father of Zebedee's children? And Zebedee, one time or other, anybody or maybe everybody has listened this name Zebedee, but they don't know the answer. They might not be aware about the answer of this question, that who was the father of Zebedee. Zebedee is a fisherman of Galilee, who is also believed to be the father of the apostle James and John. Anyone could write down at top speed in half an hour more points of this kind about which we don't know. We can write with full speed that these things we don't know, on which he knew nothing, then he could, and in the comparison of those things, then he could write down by laborious self-examination in a whole day similar points on which he had some little knowledge. It is a Herculean task to jot down those things with confidence, that yes, to claim that it is very difficult to write down about those things about which we can claim confidently that yes, we know about them, in comparison to those things we know nothing, or we know less. So ignorance is always higher or greater than knowledge. So on the whole, what Bellick seems to convey is that our field of knowledge is small, is, we can say, smaller as compared to the vast ocean of ignorance. And this knowledge, or this we can say revelation of our ignorance, of being ignorant about so many things, is good, because it leads us towards learning. So this was the first section, or we can say beginning section of this essay in praise of ignorance. I stop at this point. We'll continue this essay in the subsequent lecture. Thank you for now.